Have you ever wondered why some women radiate peace like an unshakable mountain, while others collapse under the weight of a glance, a silence, a memory? It is not because life has spared them suffering, quite the opposite. They have known betrayal in the voice of a lover, disappointment in the eyes of a father, and the kind of silence that echoes louder than rage. But within them, a different force was born. Not defense, not defiance, but stillness, a silent storm. There is a woman who does not speak often, but when she does, the room quiets. She has long since stopped performing for approval. You might think her cold, but it is not frost that shields her. It is fire, mastered. Her gaze doesn't flinch from pain. She has sat beside it, dined with it, let it devour every illusion she once mistook for love. What remains now is something older than her wounds: sovereignty. In her chest lives a calm, cultivated from 1,000 emotional battles, fought in silence. She did not win them all, but she learned to stop fearing the war. For the Stoics knew, as did Seneca, that peace is not the absence of storms, but the refusal to be owned by them. And the modern world, flooded with noise, has forgotten this ancient truth. Today, most are trained to avoid discomfort like poison. But it is through discomfort that character is forged. Like the blacksmith tempers the blade in fire and water, so must the soul be tempered in contradiction. It is there, in the liminal space between who you were taught to be and who you are becoming, that the storm brews. A woman cannot master the storm outside until she dares to descend into the storm within. It begins with noticing the smallest tremors, the clench of your jaw when you feel unseen, the pit in your stomach when affection is withdrawn, the compulsive urge to prove, to earn, to be enough. These are not flaws. These are invitations, echoes from your shadow self, begging to be integrated, not banished. Jung spoke of the shadow not as a villain, but as a forgotten twin, the child who bore the burden of your pain so your ego could survive. But now, survival is not enough. Now, you must thrive. And thriving means confrontation with what you fear, with what you deny, with what you project onto others, especially men. Because the storm you feel when he doesn't text back isn't about him. It's about the wound he touched, the part of you that still believes love must be earned. That silence means abandonment, that you must become smaller to be chosen. And until you face the origin of that belief, you will keep performing the same play, just with different actors. Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." He was not speaking of laziness. He meant the way we exhaust ourselves chasing approval, fighting battles that do not matter, avoiding the one war that does, the war for inner alignment. When you seek external peace without confronting the internal chaos, your life becomes a hollow performance. Grace on the outside, grief on the inside. But when you master the silent storm, you stop performing. You become. And becoming is not polite. It is not palatable. It is not pretty. It is raw. It is sacred. It is the unbecoming of every lie you inherited in girlhood, and the emergence of the woman who no longer needs to be liked to be worthy. The Stoics would have called her eudaimonic, not happy, but whole. Not tranquil, because life is kind, but tranquil because she has made peace with life's cruelty. Her peace is not passive. It is a sword she keeps sheathed, knowing she no longer needs to prove she can wield it. If you are listening to this, perhaps a part of you is tired. Tired of the games, tired of the masks, tired of the cage built from shoulds and musts, and maybe if I'm more this, he'll stay. The truth is, Peace does not come when he stays. Peace comes when you no longer betray yourself to make him stay. This is the turning point, the descent, not away from life, but into it, into the cave of your shadow, where every unwept tear and every silenced scream waits for your return. There is no map, no script, no applause, only the quiet discipline to remain with yourself when every instinct screams to run. But if you stay, if you remain still in the face of that storm, it will break you open, not to destroy you, but to reveal you. Do not mistake stillness for weakness. The woman who stands calm in the eye of her own chaos is not passive, she is present. She has stopped reacting and started remembering. She no longer surrenders her power to moods, to men, to the mirage of control. She lets things fall away, not because she does not care, but because she has learned that clinging is the language of fear, and fear is no longer her master. The world may call her hard. But hardness is not what you see, it is clarity. It is the sharp line between what she accepts and what she no longer entertains. She does not confuse love with labor. She does not interpret silence as shame. She does not accept breadcrumbs when her soul demands a feast. She has burned too many versions of herself to keep the wrong people warm. And still, she is soft. But it is the softness of water, not wool. Water that wears down stone, not because it is aggressive, but because it is patient. She knows now that inner peace is not about muting her emotions. It is about honoring them without obeying them. It is about holding both rage and compassion in the same breath and choosing stillness anyway. Modern psychology speaks of regulation, of nervous systems attuned to trauma, of flight responses hiding in plain sight, beneath people-pleasing, beneath perfectionism, beneath the frozen smile you wear when your body is screaming. But Stoicism, ancient and stripped of pity, demands something deeper: choice. And choice begins when you no longer confuse pain with punishment. The woman who suffers is not broken. She is awakening to the origin of her need, to the source of her silence, to the hidden vows she made as a girl, to be agreeable, to be good, to be wanted more than known. These are not sins, they are scars. And scars are not weaknesses. They are the proof that you survived. But surviving is no longer enough. There comes a moment, a quiet, almost invisible moment, when a woman stops trying to prove her worth and starts embodying it. It is not loud. It is not triumphant. It does not come with applause or epiphany. It arrives like a hush, like the moment just before dawn. It is a turning inward, a reclaiming of the pieces she gave away to feel safe. And in that return, the storm begins to settle. This is not detachment as numbness. This is detachment as divinity, the ability to witness without absorbing, to engage without losing yourself, to desire without desperation. It is a sacred detachment, the kind Marcus Aurelius carried on the battlefield, and you now carry in a boardroom, a breakup, or a moment of being misunderstood and choosing not to correct it. That is power. That is peace. And peace is not found in outcomes. Peace is found in alignment. When your soul no longer negotiates with your wounds, when your values are no longer hostages to your longings, when your yes is clean and your no is holy, then, even when life collapses, you remain unshaken, because your stability no longer depends on anything you cannot control. Look deeper, and you will see this is not merely stoicism. This is individuation. This is the psychic integration of your fragmented self, the return of the feminine from exile, not to seduce or soothe, but to embody, to take her place, not on a pedestal, but on the throne within. This is shadow work, the descent into the wounds of the mother, the hunger for the father's gaze, the ache of never being fully seen, and the quiet revelation that you are the one you were waiting for. What happens when a woman no longer fears her own power? When she stops outsourcing her worth to a man, a mirror, a memory? She becomes dangerous, not because she is cruel, but because she is free. And nothing terrifies a world built on control more than a woman who cannot be controlled. She speaks truth that splits illusions. She walks away from what no longer serves her without explanation. She rests without guilt. She loves without losing herself. She weeps without shame. She demands nothing, but accepts even less. If you've ever wondered why your peace feels so fragile, ask yourself, what is it tied to? Is it rooted in someone else's attention, their validation, their consistency? Because if your peace depends on anything beyond your own soul, it will be taken from you the moment life changes, and life will change. That is its only promise. So you must anchor elsewhere, not in what you own, not in who loves you, not in how you're seen, but in how you see yourself when no one is watching, when the applause fades, when you are alone with your choices and your shame. Will you find peace there? Because that is the silent storm, the place where the ego dies and the soul begins. She enters the quiet, not as a prisoner, but as a priestess. Where others hear nothing, she listens to the rhythms beneath the noise, the pulse beneath the panic. It is there, in the dark womb of solitude, that she meets herself, not as the version shaped by others, but as the essence that always was. And there, the storm no longer frightens her. She has become its source. There is no need to resist anymore. Resistance is the language of the unhealed. It is the push and pull of the ego clinging to control, avoiding surrender. But she knows now. Surrender is not weakness. It is the strongest thing a woman can do. Because to surrender is to trust that even in destruction, there is design. Even in grief, there is growth. And even in the silence, something holy waits to be heard. The woman who has surrendered no longer chases peace like a runaway child. She calls it to her by becoming the space it desires to dwell in. She no longer pleads with men to see her. She sees herself. She no longer fears the void. She walks into it, arms open, and makes it her cathedral. You can see her, not in the way she dresses, but in the way she moves, with intention, with awareness. She does not fidget for approval or shrink beneath the gaze of envy. Her power is not performative, it is gravitational. She does not seek attention, it follows her. And if you dare to look closely, you'll see why. She is not desperate to be loved. She is already in love, with her stillness, her strength, her truth. She has learned the hardest lesson of all, that not everyone who touches your body honors your soul. That not every hand reaching for you is offering care. That some are drawn to your light only because they cannot generate their own. But still, she does not harden. She becomes discerning. And discernment, in a woman, is a holy rebellion. She no longer sees rejection as personal. It is redirection. She no longer sees endings as failures. They are initiations. When one version of her life dies, she does not grieve the fantasy. She honors the funeral and steps forward, unburdened. Because her peace is not passive, it is earned by sitting with discomfort instead of numbing it, by choosing not to chase the person who left, by resisting the compulsion to over-explain her worth. This is emotional sobriety. This is what the Stoics meant when they spoke of self-mastery. not the suppression of emotion, but the refusal to be enslaved by it. A woman ruled by her emotions is not weak. She is untrained. But a woman who has sat with her sadness, interrogated her anger, embraced her longing, and transmuted her fear, she is unshakable because she no longer asks her feelings to dictate her actions. She lets them inform her, not command her. It is in this space, between awareness and action, that peace is born. And yet, even here, peace is not permanent. It is not a destination. It is a discipline, a choice made again and again, in the face of disappointment, in the shadow of betrayal, in the ache of longing. Peace must be chosen, not once, but endlessly. For there will always be storms. Life guarantees them. But the silent storm within, the emotional reactivity, the self-abandonment, the craving for external safety, that storm is optional. That storm can be mastered, not silenced by denial, but dissolved by truth. The truth that you are already enough, that you have always been enough, and that no validation can add to what is already whole. Most people do not live, they perform. They contort themselves into personas that fit the world's script. But the woman who has mastered the silent storm has left the stage. She no longer acts. She is. She does not hustle for worthiness. She walks in it. She does not fear being misunderstood. She trusts the ones who are meant to understand will see her, and the ones who don't were never meant to. That is peace. Not the absence of struggle, but the refusal to betray yourself in the midst of it. Seneca wrote, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." The same is true for the woman. The woman who has never been burned does not know the strength of her skin. But the one who has faced the fire and lived, she is not only strong, she is sovereign. And this sovereignty is not granted. It is claimed, not with violence, but with silence, not with armor, but with awareness, with the quiet dignity of choosing herself again and again, even when it would be easier to collapse, even when it would be easier to chase, even when it would be easier to become someone softer, smaller, more acceptable. But she does not, because peace, true peace, is not born in comfort. It is born in confrontation. She does not seek peace like a fantasy. She builds it brick by brick from the ruins of her illusions. There was a time, perhaps not long ago, when her world was shaped by promises that never came true. She gave too much, too quickly. Not because she was naive, but because her heart was vast. And when it cracked under the weight of unmet expectations, she did not collapse forever. She studied the fracture. She traced the pain to its root, not in him, not in them, but in the echo of her own abandonment. This is what most will never dare to do. Turn inward and stay. Stay when the wound screams. Stay when the urge to distract howls. Stay when every muscle begs to numb, to flee, to fill the silence with anything, just not the truth. But she stayed. And in staying, she uncovered the architecture of her own peace. It was never going to be found in a partner, or a paycheck, or a perfectly balanced day. It was never waiting in the mirror's reflection. It was never hidden in rituals or routines, or checklists of enoughness. Peace was beneath it all, under the mask, under the performance, under the striving. It had always been waiting for her to come home. This homecoming is not glamorous. It is not shareable. No one claps for you when you stop abandoning yourself, but you will know. You will feel it in the stillness between decisions, in the moment you say no without apology, in the conversation you no longer chase, in the breath you take before responding to a trigger, and choose presence over protection. This is mastery, not perfection, but presence. And presence is the sacred ground where peace grows. The Stoics knew that the outer world was wild and unpredictable, that no amount of planning could prevent the loss of a child, the betrayal of a friend, the collapse of a dream. And so they turned inward, not to escape life, but to meet it fully, to be undistracted in the face of chaos, to stand like an ancient oak rooted in virtue while the winds of fortune howled around them. The modern world has traded this virtue for validation. Now, we measure worth in attention, likes, follows, texts, compliments, offers. But what is all of that, truly, if it keeps you enslaved to the opinions of those who do not even see your soul? A woman who has mastered the silent storm no longer needs to be seen by others to believe in herself. Her gaze has turned inward. She witnesses herself, every triumph, every tremble, every moment of doubt followed by the soft whisper, "Still, you are worthy." And in that witnessing, she reclaims something sacred, her inner authority. She no longer hands it over to men who praise her body, but fear her depth. To friends who applaud her light, but vanish when her darkness emerges. To systems that profit off her insecurity, offering endless products, but no real peace. Peace cannot be bought. It must be earned through solitude, through the courage to walk away, not just from people, but from versions of yourself that were created out of fear, earned through grief, the kind that breaks open the bones of your identity, earned through restraint, the kind that keeps you from speaking just to fill silence, or posting just to feel seen. When you are no longer addicted to being understood, you have found freedom, and freedom is the mother of peace. But this freedom will cost you. It will cost you your victimhood, your excuses, your story about how you are not enough. It will ask you to look at yourself naked, emotionally, spiritually, and ask, who am I when I am no longer performing? The answer will not come all at once. It will emerge slowly, like dawn creeping over a winter field, a warmth in the chest, a steadiness in the spine, a knowing in the eyes that says, I am whole, even in the unraveling. And others will notice, not because you are louder, but because you are quieter. Not because you command attention, but because you no longer crave it. You have entered a different frequency, one where peace is not a prize, but a practice. You will still feel pain, but it will no longer define you. You will still face storms, but you will no longer flinch, because the storm inside has calmed. And when that storm is silent, the world loses its power to shake you. This is not the end of your becoming. It is the beginning of something more sacred, being. There is a moment, after the shedding, after the silence, when the world begins to feel different, not because it has changed, but because you have. The noise still exists, the chaos still stirs, but your nervous system no longer mistakes urgency for importance or drama for depth. You have become the observer of what once ruled you. In that sacred detachment, a new kind of woman is born. She does not rise from perfection. She rises from integration, from having sat in the wreckage of who she thought she needed to be, and choosing piece by piece what was hers to keep and what was never hers to carry. She no longer builds herself from borrowed blueprints. This woman, the one who walks slowly, speaks deliberately, and doesn't flinch when she's alone, she did not arrive by accident. She was sculpted by choices made in the dark, when no one was watching. when the easy thing was to return to chaos, to reach for comfort, to numb the ache with distraction. But she chose the path of fire, of purification, of stillness, and now she is not afraid to be misunderstood, because her life is no longer a performance for applause. It is a prayer for alignment. She speaks when she has something to say, not because silence makes her insecure. She loves without needing to be needed. She walks away without creating an enemy. Because her worth is no longer tethered to what she gives or receives. It is a state of being, not a transaction. This is what Seneca meant when he spoke of inner peace as self-sufficiency, not isolation, but a refusal to make your serenity the hostage of someone else's behavior. The world might call her indifferent, but it is not indifference. It is discernment. She sees clearly now. The way people project their fears onto others. The way they confuse control with love. The way they demand energy they haven't earned simply because they are entitled to attention. She no longer plays those games, and in refusing, she liberates not only herself, but others. Because when a woman embodies peace, she gives permission for others to do the same. She becomes a mirror, not of perfection, but of what is possible when you stop chasing and start choosing. To choose stillness, to choose truth, to choose your own energy over someone else's approval. The truth is, the more aligned you become, the lonelier it can feel. Not because you are alone, but because you no longer tolerate counterfeit connections. You'd rather sit in silence than make conversation with someone who only sees your surface. You'd rather sleep alone than share your body with someone who doesn't honor your mind. You'd rather lose someone than lose yourself. Again. This is the silent storm mastered. The transformation from reactive girl to sovereign woman. From someone who was shaped by her circumstances to someone who shapes her reality, not by force, but by frequency, by the energy of someone who has nothing to prove and everything to protect. Her peace, her truth, her time, her body, her voice. She no longer rushes. She no longer begs. She no longer explains. Because the woman who has sat in the storm and found herself still standing does not need to justify her calm to anyone. Her existence is enough. And yet, the world will try to pull her back, to trigger her, to tempt her with chaos disguised as passion, to test her boundaries, to mislabel her peace as arrogance. But she knows now, those are echoes of the past, and she is no longer living there. She is here, present, whole, unapologetic. She no longer fears the waves because she has become the ocean. She does not need to announce her arrival anymore. Her presence speaks before her lips ever part. It is not her beauty that quiets the room. It is her energy, her peace, the quiet power of someone who has met herself at the edge of despair and did not run, who faced abandonment, not with desperation, but with devotion to herself. Others sense it, even if they do not understand it. They may call her mysterious, intimidating, too much, or too quiet. But what they are really feeling is unfamiliarity. They are encountering a woman who does not negotiate her boundaries, who does not collapse to make others comfortable, who does not perform femininity as submission, but as sovereignty. This is not rebellion. This is return to essence, to alignment, to the truth that lived in her before she was taught to betray it. And make no mistake, betrayal was taught, not always with words, but with glances, with withdrawn love, with punishment disguised as discipline, with the subtle conditioning that her power must be softened to be loved, that her anger was unbecoming. that her ambition made her less desirable, that her intuition was irrational. But she remembers now. Remembers that her anger was not wild, it was righteous, that her ambition was not masculine, it was purpose, that her intuition was not weakness, it was wisdom. She has called these parts of herself back home, each one once exiled for the sake of acceptance. Now, they are her counsel. The modern woman who embodies Stoic depth is not cold. She is precise. She is clear. She is present. But she is no longer afraid of being alone, for she has learned the art of being with herself. And that kind of woman is dangerous, not because she harms, but because she cannot be harmed by the same illusions that once held her hostage. Her silence is not empty. It is full of restraint, full of discernment, full of power that no longer needs to prove itself. She does not interrupt her peace for every invitation to chaos. She lets others spin. She lets the world whirl around her. But she stays centered, anchored, rooted in values, not validation. And from this rootedness, she leads, not others necessarily, but herself. That is the highest form of leadership, self-governance. In Jungian terms, she has begun the great work of individuation. She no longer seeks wholeness outside herself. She understands the masculine and feminine within her must reconcile. Her inner father, the voice of logic, discipline, and structure, no longer dominates. Nor does her inner mother, the voice of intuition, emotion, and nurturance, remain buried. They dance now, equal, balanced, sacred. This harmony is what births true peace, not perfection, not placation, but the reconciliation of inner opposites. The woman who knows when to act and when to rest, when to fight and when to surrender, when to speak and when to let silence do the speaking. It is not about being emotionless. It is about being emotionally sovereign. She feels deeply, but no longer bleeds needlessly. She loves fully, but no longer loses herself in the name of love. She forgives, but does not forget what her body remembered long before her mind did. That peace is not passive, it is protection. She is done begging for closure, done explaining her pain to those committed to misunderstanding it, done overextending in the hope of being chosen. She has chosen herself every day, in the quiet moments, in the hard decisions, in the boundaries that cost her company, but returned her sanity. Others may call it loneliness. She calls it liberation. Because the truth is, peace often arrives through loss. The loss of illusion, the loss of identities built on survival, the loss of people who were never really with you, only with the version of you who stayed small. And when those fall away, what's left is not emptiness, it's clarity. Clarity that does not waver with moods or seasons or someone else's affection. Clarity that sees through manipulation, through sweet words hiding selfish intent. Clarity that smiles and says, I see you, but I choose me. Not out of malice, but out of maturity. Because the woman who has mastered the silent storm no longer fears who will leave. She is no longer performing for love. She is love. Love anchored in truth, not in transaction. And that kind of love, it doesn't chase. She doesn't chase because what is meant for her never requires the sacrifice of her dignity. This woman, born from the furnace of inner alchemy, has faced the questions that once broke her. Am I enough? Am I too much? Why did they leave? Why do I always have to prove my value? And she no longer answers them with performance or self-abandonment. She answers them with silence, with presence, with the unwavering truth. I am. Not I am enough. Not I am worthy. Simply, I am. Because There is no longer a need to decorate her existence with justification. This is not arrogance. It is the calm of someone who has nothing to prove and nothing to hide. She walks now with an elegance that has nothing to do with how she moves, and everything to do with what she no longer carries. The burden of being understood, the ache of being needed, the anxiety of being left, all have been laid to rest. She does not guard her heart with walls. She protects it with wisdom. She has rewritten the narrative, the one that said she must earn love, that silence means disapproval, that strength requires hardness, that peace is what comes after life settles down. She knows better now. Peace is not the result. It is the revolt, a rebellion against the addiction to suffering, a holy refusal to betray herself, even when her body remembers how easy it used to be. Because the truth is, trauma trains you to chase, to run after the ones who pull away, to explain your worth in monologues, to read silence as rejection and rejection as confirmation of your deepest fears. But healing, real healing, makes you pause, makes you breathe, makes you choose, and in that choosing, the storm begins to quiet. There will always be noise in the world, always someone trying to test your stillness, to pull you back into roles you've outgrown. But when you've mastered the storm within, you recognize the game, you see the pattern, and you smile, not with smugness, but with clarity, with grace, with that slow, sacred knowing. I no longer need to respond. She does not ghost. She does not rage. She does not explain. She simply exits, returns, pivots, whatever the moment demands. Because her peace is not performative. It is practical. It is the ground she walks on and the air she breathes. It is the flame behind her eyes and the softness in her smile. And when you speak to her, when you really see her, you feel it. The depth, the stillness, the fire that does not burn but warms, the boundaries that do not wound but protect, the love that does not cling but flows. She is not here to be adored. She is here to be, to exist in the fullness of her truth, without apology. She does not demand space. She is space. She does not beg for time. She becomes timeless. And while others may chase meaning in people, status, titles, she has found it in silence, in breath, in the simple act of being with herself. That is the gift of the silent storm. Not the absence of pain, but the transformation of it. Not the erasure of need, but the refinement of it. She still wants connection. She still desires depth. But she no longer fears solitude, and she never again confuses chaos for chemistry. There will be moments still when she feels the old ache rise, the longing to be seen, the temptation to explain, the grief of what could have been. But she greets it with compassion, with reverence, like an old ghost she no longer fears. Because she knows now, pain may visit, but it no longer moves in. She is not above suffering. She simply no longer identifies with it. And in that liberation, she no longer clings to outcomes. She no longer attaches her joy to someone else's consistency. She has grieved the fantasy of being rescued, and in doing so, rescued herself. Now, peace is her lover. Silence is her sanctuary. Her worth is not in question. It is a given. Her presence is not a gift to be proven. It is a birthright. And perhaps the most powerful truth of all, she no longer needs anyone to see this for it to be real, because she sees it. She sees herself.